What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Louisville Sports Talk. I'm your host. My name is Cam, and for today's video, we're going to be talking about my reaction to Louisville's win over Eastern Kentucky, winning 51-17. Louisville football kicked off their season on Saturday afternoon, playing against the EKU Colonels. Heading into that game, Louisville was about a 39.5 to 40-point favorite before kickoff, and so there was a pretty good understanding that this was going to be a beatdown. This is just a tune-up game heading into next week against JMU, but there couldn't have been a better way to start off the season with an absolute smackdown against the Colonels. We had a 3:30 p.m. kickoff time, so I got out there around 12-ish, set up my tailgating spot, kicked it for a couple hours. The vibes were high. It was a beautiful day. It was a little bit hotter than what I thought it was going to be leading into the game, but overall, it was just a beautiful day, a great game day experience, especially to kick off the 2025 football season. The vibes were definitely great heading into this one. I saw a lot more people out tailgating. Overall, the attendance was a lot better than I expected, just for the fact that we're playing an FCS opponent and we knew that it was going to be a beatdown. But on the other hand, it's the first game of the season. Vibes are at an all-time high around the program. Josh Hurd just said the other day that we recorded, I think it was 40,000 plus season ticket holders for this year, which he said hasn't been that high since Lamar's years. But overall, I was very impressed with the turnout. The fans showed up. They were loud. It was just an overall great game day experience to start off the season. But anyway, let's get past all that. Let's jump into the actual game itself and break down what I saw and what I think. During the first half, the offense and defense played at an extremely high level. And I'll be the first one to say, I know this is EKU. I know this isn't Notre Dame or a Power 4 school or anything. But in the first half alone, Louisville completely dominated the game. In the first quarter, we were up 21-0, which we haven't scored 21 points in the first quarter since 2017. At half, we were up 41-7, which going into this game, I had predicted that we would score at least 40 points in the first half. Now, the second half was a snooze fest, to say the least. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but just know I'm mainly focusing on the first half just because we played our ones and our twos in the first half. And then after the first half, it just went straight down the depth chart and we were throwing our backups in and our third stringers and basically just getting anybody who could play. We were just giving them some minutes. So the second half wasn't an exciting brand of football, but bringing it down to the fundamentals, I think it was well needed to get those guys in, get them those reps, get them in a game, get them playing, and just to feel everything out. But anyway, the first half. EKU won the coin toss. They decided to defer it so they would get the ball back at half. So Louisville would start off with the first possession. And to say the least, that first possession was a bit of a doozy. You started off the season receiving the ball, had a very nice return by Colin Lacey just for it to get called back by a holding penalty. And I'm not even joking. It seemed like that first drive for Louisville lasted probably like 10 years just because of how many flags were thrown. We would make a 15 to 20 yard gain just for it to come right back because of a holding call or whatever it was. So that first drive was stalled by some unfortunate calls from the referees, but Antonio Meeks would come through with consecutive 15 to 20 yard catches. One got called back because of a flag, and then on the very next play, he would gain back the yards lost with another big catch. So there was 2 consecutive catches by Antonio Meeks, and then Isaac Brown on 2 consecutive plays ran for about 50 yards. On the first run, he had a nice little 15 to 20 yard gain, and then they handed it right back to him on the next play, and he took it to the house for 31 yards. Turned on the Jets, completely dusted the entire defense, read the defense really well, hit his holes, hit his gaps, and made the right moves and ran his way into the end zone. Then after the first touchdown from Isaac Brown, EKU would go 3 and out. And if I'm getting this right, I believe EKU only got 1 or 2 first downs in the entirety of the first half, which is very impressive. After the first Eastern Kentucky possession going 3 and out, Louisville forcing them to punt the ball, they would punt the ball 52 yards to Colin Lacey, who returned it at the 7-yard line and ran it back for a 93-yard punt return. And I tell you what, it was at that exact moment when me and my buddy who was with me at the game lost our voices for the rest of the day, because that was probably the perfect moment to lead us into going into this season, if that makes sense. Like I said, the crowd was good, the weather was great, the atmosphere, the vibes, everything was there. Had a little bit of a lackluster first possession, scored a touchdown, but to come straight out the gates, force a 3-and-out, and to take a punt back 97 yards, Colin Lacey is that man. And he'll probably lead Louisville in all-purpose yards, receiving yards, maybe even receiving touchdowns. We'll see how that goes throughout the year, but Colin Lacey is that man. So after Louisville went up 14-0, EKU went on another 3-and-out. The defense was very, very solid in the first half, but EKU would punt it away, and Louisville went on a 10-play, 79-yard touchdown drive, which was led by Miller Moss running it in for an 8-yard touchdown run. So in the first quarter, you had Isaac Brown score a 31-yard touchdown, Colin Lacey with a 97-yard punt return, and Miller Moss with an 8-yard touchdown run. The offense was clicking on all cylinders. Eastern Kentucky started off the second quarter with going 9 yards on 6 plays. We would force a punt, and on this possession is where Isaac Brown ran for a 68-yard touchdown for his second score of the day and to put him at over 100 yards on the day in the first half. So now it's 28-0. After that possession, EKU would do another 3-and-out, punt it to Louisville, and then Miller Moss would lead Louisville down the field and throw a 30-yard dot to Duke Watson in the end zone. It was a beautiful pass from Miller Moss, but it was a great catch from Duke Watson. So now Louisville's up 28-0. They continue to make EKU go 3-and-out on the offense. Defense was very, very, very solid in the first half. Louisville would score one more touchdown in the first half with a 1-yard touchdown run from running back Kewan Brown. Now let me say this. Kewan looks like he did as a true freshman. Last year, he was banged up throughout the entirety of the year, never could really break rotation. But this year, he looks to be healthy. He looks to have lost a little bit of weight, it seems, but he still has that power there too. But he runs the football like he's mad at the ground. I would hate to be on the receiving side of one of his hits. Kewan, I know being the third option at running back isn't typically where you would want to be at, but Kewan is in such a good position with this program to have Isaac Brown and then Duke Watson and then Kewan leading that backfield. He could take ownership of being the third down back or the goal line back. I could really see that. He has a lot of power to him. He's fast, he's powerful, and he just makes really good decisions while running the football. I'm very excited to see what the future holds for Kewan. Before we even got Isaac Brown or Duke Watson, I was very high on Kewan leading into last year. He was plagued by injuries all season. So now going into this year, I hope the best for Kewan, and I think he's going to be a great third option running back. After almost losing him to Boise State this past offseason, there was no one more excited than myself to have him come back to the team. So after the touchdown from Kewan, Louisville's up 41-0. They would then again force EKU to go 3-and-out, where then on Louisville's next possession, Miller Moss threw an unfortunate high ball where the receiver tried to make a play on it. And instead of helping, he ended up hurting us. He tried to jump after the ball with one hand, popped it up in the air, and the DB was in the perfect position to catch the ball and run it back, 20, 15 yards. So that was pretty unfortunate. I don't blame that on Miller. I do say that he threw it a little bit too high. He threw it over his head, and I just don't think the receiver should have made a play on the ball, and none of that would have happened. It should have just been an incompletion, but instead it turned into a pick six, and that's pretty unfortunate, but those things do happen. So then on the next possession, Louisville was marching down the field. Miller Moss threw another great ball to receiver Antonio Meeks. He had the opportunity to catch it, and he corralled it, went down onto the ground. His body bounced off the ground. The ball bounced off his body. Ball went up into the air, and he kicked it. And that's another position where the defensive back was just in that perfect place at the perfect time, and he caught the ball, ran it back for like 40 yards or something. That definitely sucked, but in no way on those last two possessions of the first half is that anything Miller Moss could have done. The first one, like I said, it was a high ball, but on both of those plays, they were just freak plays where the ball bounced in the perfect position for the defensive back to be right there and make the play. And so after the second interception, the time would run out in the first half, and Louisville led 41-7 overall. What else could you want in a first half? I mean, we completely dominated on both sides of the ball. There was miscues on offense and defense causing penalties, which did hurt us a little bit. Not to where it cost us the game or anything, but I would rather those type of penalties and those type of miscues to happen against Eastern Kentucky than I would say this Friday night against James Madison. That's going to be a completely different case. You can't have these penalties and this amount of whoopsies on offense and defense and hope to lead a game against a Power 4 opponent. That's just not going to happen. We finished the day with 3 turnovers, which we ended up being -3 at. So EKU had 0 turnovers while we had 3, which is definitely not something you want to make a consistent thing out of. But like I said, I'd rather get the first game jitters out, and let's hope and pray that the offense and defense get in sync to where those type of situations wouldn't happen. I mean, most of them were things that are very fixable, like holding calls. There was I believe there was a face mask thrown into there. Chris Bell had a flag thrown on him for an unsportsmanlike penalty, but I don't think it was his fault. He was aggressively tackled out of bounds to where he had to respond to the people that were doing that to him and let them know, hey, you can't do this to me. I have to protect myself as well. They could have easily injured him the way they did that. So I'm surprised that the refs threw a flag on Chris Bell for retaliating against the initial response. In the first half, there was just a lot of goofiness that I think over this next week we're going to have to tighten up, especially leading into this game against JMU, because JMU is not going to let us get away with those penalties, with the turnovers. They're going to make us cost with that. So we got to clean that stuff up real quick. Other than the penalties and the turnovers in the first half, we completely dominated them. I mean, it was 41-7. EKU might have had 1 or 2 first downs in the entirety of the first half, and they just got completely owned in the trenches, the physicality standpoint. We pretty much did exactly what we were supposed to do against that type of competition. Now, like I said, the second half was a bit of a snooze fest, putting in the second, third stringers. We only scored 10 points in the second half. One was from a 31-yard pass from Brady Allen to Chris Hughes, and then the other was a 3-point field goal from our newly starting kicker, Cooper Ranvier. I had no idea leading into the season who was going to be the starting kicker. There had been rumblings amongst websites and different people that cover the team saying that it was this player, it was Ranvier, but nobody really stood out after this game. I have 100% whole confidence in Ranvier being our starting kicker, which is definitely exciting, especially coming from the past couple years where kicking has been, it's not been the best, but here's to brighter pastures and better days. I think we're in good hands with Ranvier. That's pretty much the total of the second half. The only thing I have to say about the second half, Brady Allen starting at QB2 instead of Deuce Adams is a head-scratching decision for myself. I'm not saying I'm questioning Brom and his quarterback whispering ways, but at the same time, it's clear as day that Deuce should be the QB2 going into the season. Now, I haven't been at practices or anything. I haven't seen what Coach Brom has seen or what Brian Brom has seen to make them position Brady Allen into that QB2 spot. He might win practice a lot, you know, he might show out in practices, but when it comes to playing in game, contributing to the game, and being a quarterback, Deuce is the clear number 2. He's got the athleticism, the arm strength, the accuracy. He's more mobile as a quarterback, faster. The only thing I can think of the reason why is because he's younger. And if that's the case, then that's a little bit concerning, but like I said, I'm not questioning Jeff Brom, quarterback whisperer. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trust his gut. I'm going to let him play whoever he wants to play, but I definitely think that Deuce should be at that QB2 spot. Like I said, we're going to be talking mainly about the first half just because of the fact that that's when the majority of the 1s and 2s played. Miller Moss in one half of play went 17 of 25 for 223 yards, which is a career high in his first half. Threw for 1 touchdown, ran in for 1 touchdown, and then had 2 fluky interceptions. It sucks that it's on his record. They were both tip balls. I wish there was a way that there'd be an asterisk or something where they wouldn't count that against him. But at the end of the day, He's got that next to his name. So right now for the season, he has 1 passing touchdown and 2 interceptions. Isaac Brown was the man of the day in one half of football. Man had 6 carries for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know how much more clear I can be when I'm saying this. I don't know if I have to climb on top of my roof and scream it to the entirety of the neighborhood, but Isaac Brown is a dark horse for the Heisman this year. I 100% expect him to be in that room at the end of the year, waiting for his name to be called for that Heisman Trophy. Dude is electric. Coming into this game, a lot of people would say arguably the best running back in the nation. And after this weekend, I'm not even going to say it's arguable. He is the #1 running back in the country. Bookmark it, pin it down. Hate on me all you want. I don't care. Isaac Brown is him. He's the truth. I said it in the last video and I'll say it again. If Louisville makes it to the college football playoff, it's because of Isaac Brown. I'm so excited to see what this year has in tow for him. Chris Bell had an okay game. 5 receptions, 63 yards, 0 touchdowns. Only played in the first half. Like I said, I'm going to keep saying that. All the starters that I'm going to mention, all these stats, they're all for the people that played in the first half, where we went up 41-7. And then after that, Jeff Brom made the smart decision to sit everyone. You don't want to cause a dumb injury, especially leading into this JMU game, which is going to be a lot more competitive game against a better competition. So I think he made the smart play, not running up the score and letting the starters sit in the second half for this JMU game. One player that I would have liked to see more production out of was going to be Duke Watson. He only had 2 carries for 2 yards, but then he also had that 31 yard reception for the touchdown from Miller Moss. He had an okay game. He was there. He made his plays, but I just would have liked to see him with a little bit more production, a little bit more snaps. But other than that, I mean, there's really not much you could say about his game. One person that I am really surprised about was Sean Boykins, who came in this past offseason as a freshman coming out of high school, where he played wide receiver at. During this past offseason, Brom and company decided to switch him from wide receiver to running back, and he came in and he made quite the impression on myself. He only had 5 carries, but he went 40 yards for an average of 8 yards per carry. And that's not impressive in itself, but what was impressive was how he ran the football. In his first college appearance, for him to once again be transitioning from wide receiver to running back and to come in his first collegiate game and run for 40 yards on 5 carries, I mean, and you look at the film, he has a certain physicality about him that you just can't replicate in other players. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jeff Brom and Brian Brom probably switched him over to that running back position, because they saw that he probably has more potential at the running back position than the wide receiver position. He's a physical guy. He's big, muscular, runs like a tank, and I didn't know how to feel about him switching from wide receiver to running back heading into this year, especially with how stacked and deep our running back room is. It's impressive to see him come in and make that immediate of an impact, and I'm excited to see where his career is going to take him. And another one I was surprised about was Braxton Jennings. Had 6 carries, only 27 yards, but it was good to see a young guy like him come in and get those amount of snaps. It might have not been meaningful football. We were up 41-7, 48-14, whatever the score was when these guys were playing, but it can't be underestimated what playing in an actual college football game does for these young guys. Like I said, Chris Bell finished with 5 catches for 63 yards, no touchdowns. Colin Lacey had 4 catches for 62 yards with no touchdowns. Chris Hughes, who definitely looked impressive, had 3 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Antonio Meeks was 2 for 34, 0 touchdowns. Duke Watson with his lone reception for 30 yards for a touchdown. And then there was a bunch of other guys with 1 or 2 catches here and there with, 20, 30 yards, but 0 touchdowns. But I felt like the offense was definitely spread even throughout the wide receiver unit, the running back unit. They definitely pulled out all the cards, not even in their playbook, but just all the players to come out and physically play so that we wouldn't have to force an injury or whatever. Now, the defense was absolutely locked in the first half. They allowed 0 points. Like I said, 1 or 2 first downs, and they were pretty sound overall for the entirety of the game. The second half, it got a little bit sloppy here and there, but that's what's to be expected. But anyway, on defense, Jordan Garrard led you with 5 tackles, 1 assisted, 0 sacks. AJ Green had 3 tackles, 1 sack. Maurice Davis had 3 tackles, no sacks. Clev Lubin, on the other hand, had 2 tackles, 2 assisted, and 2 sacks. And he laid the boom down on those sacks. If I was a opposing team's quarterback going into playing against Louisville, knowing the fact that we have Clev Lubin on one end and Wesley Bailey on the other, that's something I would be pretty terrified of. Those 2 guys, they're going to be menaces on this defense. I think our defense is probably going to take not a substantial leap, but they're definitely going to take a lot of steps forward in bringing us into a complete team as a whole instead of us just being an offensive team. The past couple years, 2023, we had an elite defense. And then last year, they took a bunch of steps back, unfortunately. And now this year, I think we're trending back into that direction of being that 2023 defense again. We were great against the run, passes over the middle, quarterback runs. Just as a whole, the game, like I said, for the 10th time, I know it's against EKU, but this is exactly what you should have wanted out of your offense and defense. Except for the turnovers and for the penalties, this was a complete game. I don't think anything else could be said about this game at all. It was an FCS opponent. We were 40-point favorites. We ended up not covering the spread, which happens a lot if you're a Louisville fan. But yeah, we came through in the first half, whipped them on offense, whipped them on defense, had those unfortunate turnovers and penalties. And then in the second half, we relieved all of our starters and we scored 10 more points on them. So, it is what it is. It was a great opening game. I had a lot of fun being there. The crowd was electric. It was a great day. The vibes, the energy. I'm glad football is back. Yeah, just overall, it was a very great day. I'm excited. I can't wait for this Friday night game against JMU. I definitely think that'll tell us a lot more about this team than what this game did, just based off of how much better JMU is going to be than Eastern Kentucky. I'm not going to go into the JMU game yet. We'll save that for another video here in a couple days. But just know that JMU this Friday night game, it's not going to be a dogfight, I don't think, but it's going to be a lot more competitive than what this past game was against EKU. Before we go, I'm going to give you my 2 MVPs, one for the offense, one for the defense. Now on offense, I was struggling a little bit going back and forth. Maybe I should give it to him. Maybe I should give it to him. But I think we all know who I'm going to go with. And it should be Isaac Brown. 6 carries, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns in one half of football. Dude was a beast. And then, on the other hand, I could have given it to Colin Lacey, who had 202 all-purpose yards, 1 touchdown, that 97 kickoff punt return. Either one of them, they could probably be 1A, 1B, but I'm going to give it to Isaac Brown, just knowing the fact of how big of a season he's going to have this year for us. So I'll give it to Isaac Brown on offense. And on defense, I'm going to give it to Clev Lubin. In his first game with the Cardinals, Clev made an immediate impact, had 9.5 sacks last year, and then finishes with 2 tackles, 2 assisted, and 2 sacks. That dude is just, I think he's going to wreck the ACC this year. Not a lot of people know about Clev Lubin, probably because he came from a smaller school in Coastal Carolina. Like I said, he did have a lot of SEC offers heading into the portal. Luckily, he chose us, and I think he's going to have a giant year this year. But yeah, and overall the game, offense did exactly what it was supposed to do. Defense did exactly what it was supposed to do. We ran it up on them in the first half, sat everyone in the second half, let everybody get their breathers. There was no injuries. You went into the game pretty healthy. You're leaving the game pretty healthy. Put 51 points on them. The starting D didn't let them score a single point. So I really don't think there's anything else you could have wanted out of an opening day game against a lesser opponent. We did exactly what we wanted to do, what we knew we could do, and what we should have done. So now we break off from the EKU Colonels and we look ahead into Friday night facing off against JMU. That's going to be a big game for us, and I'll tell you for a couple reasons on the next video. But anyway, other than that, my name's Cam. This has been Louisville Sports Talk. I really appreciate you guys joining in. Drop a like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, anyway, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.